What's going on, Junkie Nation? Gorgeous George and Goes are back. We are talking some PFL with the play-by-play commentator for PFL. Don't forget, PFL number 10 in the year 2021. It's their championship week coming up on October 27th. The party starts off at 6 p.m. Eastern on ESPN+. Then they migrate over to ESPN2 for the 6 title fights, plus some other fun stuff on the card, including the return of Clarissa Shields. What's going on, OC? How you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you guys?
Good. So check this out. We were blown away about an hour ago. I may actually drop some news on you, and it's going to work with you. It wouldn't work with Couture and Florian because they just know face punching, but you're an all sports guy. Do you know who Taylor Guardado's uncle is?
Who?
Chuck Muncie.
No
Remember
way.
him? Huh?
Charles Muncie is her uncle? Like direct uncle?
Yeah, Chuck Muncie is her mom's brother. He used to play for the New Orleans Saints and the San Diego Chargers years ago.
That's crazy because, when we've talked to her, she was like, yeah, athletics run in my family. My dad played football. My uncle played football. She wasn't dropping names. That's impressive.
Could it be that, or could it be that you failed to ask the follow-up, unlike Goes and I?
Yeah, it's definitely that because, people saying, I played football. That's like everybody played football at some point. Everyone's dad played football at some point. That's my bad for not saying, well, at what level are we talking about here? It's impressive.
Yeah, man, I was blown away. I'm 52 years old, so I can say I lived to see the Air Coryell teams from the early 80s. The San Diego Chargers were awesome, man. And her saying Chuck Muncie just brought back so many memories of some great playoff games, including the 1983 playoff game against the Miami Dolphins, where Kellen Winslow was so tired he's actually being helped off the field because he was just exhausted, man, physically exhausted. But
that's crazy.
I couldn't believe it.
I was born in 83, so I don't remember that game.
Oh, well, there you have it. Hey, so listen, I wanted to ask you that, you've done a couple years of this now as, behind the mic. Obviously, we all know you took down one of these championships a few years ago, but now behind the mic, what have you learned the most, I guess, about fighters that maybe you didn't realize when media was covering you?
That's a good question. I don't know how much I've learned about the fighter side of things or much more I've learned about fighters because I've been in gyms and locker rooms with fighters for, 20 years. But I think I've learned a lot more about just how hard it is for an organization to put on a high quality show, just how hard it is for an organization to keep people happy, to keep fighters happy. We're always very critical of pay scales, and we're critical of fighter performances, and we're critical of matchmaking and all this stuff. And it's just, I've learned kind of being on the other side of things a little bit, how difficult it is to just put on a halfway decent promotion. And I think that, the folks that are doing it at a high level, like PFL is, like the UFC has done for a long time, like one championship, it's actually really, really impressive how much goes into it. Like corporate America and sports meeting up with the personalities involved with, the mixed martial arts game. To make that successful is a very intricate balance. And I've become more and more impressed with the PFL and with the leadership of the PFL that only 3 seasons in, we're making the splash that we are.
And so have I. I mean, you guys continuously attempt new things to make the viewing, the night of the fights, the viewing pleasure greater for us, whether it's media, for fans. Sometimes it's those or what are they called when they maybe it was because of COVID, but how you guys have like the watch parties of the families. There's a lot of emotion there. The stats that you guys have come up with on the side, it's really, really fascinating. And I wanted to ask you, it must be pretty amazing that every year PFL kind of takes many steps forward. Like I applaud them for that. You guys are definitely on a learning curve, obviously, because of the UFC and Bellator and formerly Strikeforce and other organizations, but I think you guys are living up to it.
Yeah, and that's a testament to that leadership I just mentioned. Don Davis and Pete Murray, those guys are big time business folks, right? They're individuals who had success, and they have a long resume of, impressive accolades in the corporate world, in the business world, in the sports entertainment world. And when they decided to focus those efforts on mixed martial arts, they saw the sport in a way that a lot of people don't. And they saw that there's room for a ton of innovation. There's room for a QBR type stat. And we brought that in this season with fighter performance rating, with FPR. They realized that even like the camera work could improve. And, they incorporated the ghost cam and the smart cage to track strike speed and all this stuff. It's super impressive the way they're willing to push the envelope, and they're willing to make pretty costly investments in developing a better way for fans to experience the sport and a better way to introduce the sport to new fans. Because those of us who've been in the game for such a long time, we just kind of assume that everybody likes mixed martial arts, everybody watches mixed martial arts, or that people are at least they're aware of it and they know about it. And it's just not true. The general sports audience that consumes football and baseball and basketball, the vast majority of those people are still like what you would call noobs or beginners on the MMA front. And we want to reach out to those people. And part of doing that is making sure that you're packaging mixed martial arts in a way that's more easy to digest, easy to understand, and more fun with all the betting stuff and the other ways that you can kind of get some skin in the game. So I've been very impressed that we continue to push the envelope and we continue to do new things. And I can't talk about specifics yet, but next year we're bringing in more new stuff that people are just like, you have no idea the lengths that this corporation, this company is willing to go to try and be number one in the sport of mixed martial arts.
Well, I'm anxious to hear that whenever that gets revealed. But I did want to ask you, because of COVID, the schedule was different this year, and you guys had no 2 fights in one night. I kind of missed it, to tell you the truth, but I understood why they did it. So maybe it's a 2-part question. Did you miss it? Do you hope, if they bring it back and you're on a committee that votes on it, will you vote for it to come back? And then that also precipitated an earlier final. Instead of December 31st, it's in October. Do you think that might be the way to go in the future as well?
I think that the final being October 27th is going to be better for us, because the reality is we're still a startup. We're still a new company. We're still a new entity and brand that people are not quite as familiar with. And with a broadcast partner like the worldwide leader ESPN, working with them and figuring out the best day where there's fewer sports, there's less things to compete for the attention of the fan base, and where they can push some marketing dollars behind it, we can push some marketing dollars behind making October 27th like appointment viewing. I think that's a better idea, right? New Year's Eve was awesome and it made it feel big, and I really enjoyed being out there and all that stuff, but it's incredibly costly for a company to do an event on New Year's Eve at Madison Square Garden in downtown Manhattan. Like just the hotel rooms for that were probably insane. And you got to get 100 hotel rooms for fighters and camps and all that stuff. So I think that making that adjustment and doing it on a night where there's a lot less to divide the attention of sports fans, I think is the way to go moving forward. And I am with you 100%. I absolutely miss the 2 fights in one night thing. I think that was a strong separator and differentiator for Professional Fighters League. I think that it made us very unique. I'd like to see it come back because of how reluctant commissions are to sanction and how difficult it can be to make sure fighters get through that stuff healthy. I'm not confident that we're going to see it come back. Those decisions are made above my pay grade, but I absolutely would vote in favor of it if anyone asked me, because, I mean, to me, that was the thing that helped justify $1 million championship. You got through 2 fights in one night. There are not a lot of people, even the best in the sport of mixed martial arts in the modern day. A lot of people haven't done that, haven't tried that. That's the old school guys. Now we can do that with a more skilled level of fighters that are a little bit more aware of how to take care of their bodies than the old school back in the dark ages of mixed martial arts when guys were drinking beers on the way to the show. Like, I wish we could bring that back and really kind of make it a staple for Professional Fighters League, but it might not make sense from a logistical standpoint. So I trust the company to do the right thing there.
Well, no one can ever take that away from you. And the ones that have done it. I mean, if this was like some sort of a Russian mafia, you guys would have that one tattoo that other MMA fighters don't have, because that's something else, man. That's like, Roman Coliseum gladiator days. And I saw you do it in Long Beach. I always tell you this. It was one of my greatest days as a fan to witness mixed martial arts, seeing all the fighters that dug deep. Your case was very cool. You had a great crowd with you, and the fact that you had to come from behind too, so that you earned your $1 million.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I love that, and I'd like for other fighters to get that opportunity to have a unique experience like that, because when you get 20, 30 fights into your career, I think for some people it gets harder to find the reason to dig deep. It gets harder to find the motivation to how's this different than the other 25 fights that I've already done? And a night like that is definitely very different, and preparing for it is very different. So I hope we see it come back in some shape or form eventually.
Yeah. And I also wanted to add to what you were saying. I was thinking as you were saying, heck, we just had a great game with the Dodgers and the Giants on a weekday night. Champions League final used to be, I think they moved it to the weekend now permanently, but that used to be on a Wednesday night. So lots of great sporting events have taken place midweek, So as soon as I saw that, I just thought it reminded me of Champions League soccer.
Yeah, no, I mean, people are looking for entertainment and sports entertainment every night of the week. And if we can offer that to them with 6 title fights in one night, 6 $1 million prizes handed out, Clarissa Shields getting back inside the smart cage. I mean, you really there's nothing better to watch on a Friday night, much less on a Wednesday night. So I hope people tune in.
Sean, this isn't much different than any other sport where at the beginning of the season, we all kind of do the math and say, these teams are usually in the finals, in the playoffs. There's been some dominant names in the past here in the PFL that we're not going to be saying their names in the final. What do you think that does for PFL? Is that a good thing? Does it kind of spicing things up a little bit?
For me, it does. And this is a debate, I think, in all sports, right? There are people who appreciate what I call parity, where you don't know when you tune into a fight or you tune into a game, you don't actually know who's going to win, right? I like that. I appreciate that. There are some sports fans who want to see greatness on display consistently. They don't like upsets. They don't like to see names that they're not familiar with have success. They don't want, they don't want to see the San Diego Padres be a successful franchise. They just want the Red Sox and the Dodgers and all that stuff. I'm not like that. I want to see true merit, true meritocracy, where if you win, you advance. If you pull off the upset and you earn that win, then you reap the rewards. There are people in the fight game who are just like that. They only want to see Conor McGregor fight. They only want to see Kamaru Usman fight. They only want to see the champions. They're only willing to tune in or to fork out the dough when it comes to watching people that they're familiar with. And that's, to me, that means you're a fan of popularity, and you're a fan of celebrity, and you're a fan of maybe greatness. You're not a fan of the sport itself. And I'm a big fan of the sport itself. So I like the fact that Lance Palmer, who I have a ton of respect for, and I consider a friend, that it wasn't his year and he didn't even make the playoffs. And I like the fact that we get to crown a new champion at 145 pounds, and that Chris Wade is finally getting his shot in this sport that he's worked so long to try and earn. I love the fact that Natan Schultz, who kind of made a name for himself on the PFL stage, had to go back to the drawing board and realize, man, I'm not there this year. I didn't have it this year. That's what every other sports league is like, right? Yeah, every once in a while you'll see back-to-back champions, and every once in a while you'll see a dynasty. But in reality, we get a pretty consistent new champion every year or every second or third year, and we're only in our third season, and we've already knocked off the quote-unquote dynasties at 145 pounds and 155 pounds for the men. Like, that tells me that this is a league and it's functioning like all the other leagues, and that's success for me.
Sean, so if we take some of those dynasties and even some of the big free agent signings, could there be like one intangible that we can point to that could say this may be what contributed to their downfall this year?
Man, I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth. I think it is hard to maintain a level of hunger and focus and drive in the sport of mixed martial arts that is required of you to be a true champion. I think it's very hard to maintain that when you've tasted finally financial success, right? Lance Palmer and Natan Schultz pulled down a couple $1 million checks. Plus they got their show and win money for their regular season fights. And both of those guys, as returning champions, were pretty handsomely compensated. So now what you're talking about for a guy like Lance Palmer is in the last couple of years, he's made more money in 2 seasons for the PFL than he has in the rest of his entire mixed martial arts career and his college wrestling career, and just grinding it out. And once you reach a mountaintop, so to speak, it's very hard to be as hungry as when you're struggling and on your way there. To me, it's the reason why it's actually crazy rare for like big time athletes' kids to also be big time successful athletes. It's one of the reasons behind that, because like mom or dad grew up hungry and was out on the basketball court every day, or on the tennis court every day, or on the mats or in the ring every single day, struggling, grinding, trying to make it happen for themselves because they didn't see another way out. They knew that this was the way for them to be successful. And a lot of times their kids are like, oh yeah, well, I don't need to put myself through that misery and that grind because dad's got $100 million and I drive the car that I want already. I think it's a psychological issue for everyone, where once you taste success and you feel like you've arrived, either consciously or subconsciously, it's a demotivator. And the people that can sustain long-term success can be like a true dynasty in mixed martial arts, like an Anderson Silva back in his prime, or George St. Pierre. That to me is more impressive than anything that happens in team sports.
Sean, I want to take a moment to talk about your success. George and I have been talking to you for quite a while, and I'm trying to think what I believe your secret to your success is that the PFL allows you to be you. And when you're calling fights, I just feel like you're calling them just as a regular guy. But even the in-ring interviews afterwards, there was one, I can't remember exactly what the scenario was, but I remember you saying something like they just weren't giving you anything, and you said, do you know anything? And George and I were dying. I mean, for about 2 minutes straight, we were laughing. But that's just you, and that's what we appreciated about that moment. And I think the fans appreciate that because we're thinking the same thing. Can you talk a little bit about how different this year was for you, and maybe how the production seems to have let you put your wings out there and fly?
I mean, I'm very, very grateful to the PFL for giving me this opportunity. And I'm super grateful to Randy and Kenny, and before Kenny, for Eve Edwards, and for Caroline Pierce, and all the people that have kind of helped. My broadcasting career in mixed martial arts is still very young, and the leadership behind the scenes, Josh Fowler and John Faratzis and George Greenberg and Rich Dewey, and some of these people who you'll never really hear their names mentioned very often, like they're the reason why I think we have a strong chemistry as a broadcast team, and why I've gotten a lot more comfortable and hopefully been able to, bring a little bit more of my personality into the role of being a play-by-play broadcaster, because these people make it, all I have to do is show up, make sure I know who I'm talking about, and tell the story. They handle everything else. I don't they make my life so easy by setting me up for success every single time. And I don't know how common that is in the sport of mixed martial arts. I don't know how common that is in sports broadcasting, period. But I'm super lucky to be kind of the beneficiary of hard work of a lot of people, and I just get to be the face of it. And George Greenberg in particular, he's produced Super Bowls. He's he's a longtime executive. And that interview you're talking about was with Kayla Harrison. Kayla was giving me one-word answers, and she's playing the character she's decided she wants to play. I freaking love Kayla. When you have conversations in private with Kayla, she's incredibly charming, charismatic, thoughtful person. and she realizes to sell fights and to create the most possible interest from a fan perspective, she's decided to make herself a little bit of a heel, and like she targets that at me, which I think is funny. And she was giving me one word answers, so I was like, I think I said something like, "Are you impressed by her performance?" No. Do you feel like your opponent tonight had anything that you needed to worry about? No. Are you impressed by anything? And she was like, no. No, right? And like, I'm like, well, I hope that was good. But then in the feedback afterward, my bosses are like, yes, do that. That's fine. Be yourself. And the fans are either going to love it or they're going to hate it. But at the end of the day, they're going to love or hate who you actually are and what you actually want to be doing. And they give me the flexibility to do that. So I love it. And I love that Kayla and I have developed a little kind of back and forth, almost adversarial relationship. It's like the old Howard Cosell and Muhammad Ali stuff, you know, where like she's the great champion and I'm just the guy that's trying to get her to say something.
Sean, speaking of her, you know, they're talking about an impending free agency. How important do you think it is for PFL to keep Kayla? Is she almost too big where, I mean, I don't know what kind of finances PFL has, but would it ruin the opportunity to keep stocking up? Like you guys did a great job, for example, bringing in Pettis and Verdum and some other names, you know. So, you know, I don't know. What do you do? Is that like almost hanging on to a quarterback in the NFL or a star NBA player? How do you think that one should be handled if you had to chip in your 2 cents?
Well, Kayla moves the needle, right? People tune in to watch her fight. She is a compelling and dominant champion. She's the most impressive athlete, man or woman, that we have on our roster. And you can make an argument she's the most impressive combat sports athlete in now 2 sports in the world right now. I think that she's kind of admitted to herself that she probably needs to do a better job of selling her own fights and selling her own personality. And I think that heel turn of sorts is part of the way that she's decided to do it. So she's incredibly important. And I hope that she's, you know, runs her whole career through the PFL. That's what I hope to see. But on the flip side of it, I think that knowing some of the ballpark of what Kayla's making for a season of fighting in the PFL and an estimate of what she could be making elsewhere, and let's just call it like it is, we're talking about her going to the UFC. It is no more important for the PFL's future to keep Kayla than it is for Kayla's future to stay with the PFL. Nobody else is going to pay Kayla Harrison what the PFL is paying her. And I know that she wants to check this box if I'm the greatest fighter on the planet. And there's only really one woman that she would have to beat that would test that, who happens to be her training partner. So that's probably not going to be like, that might not happen anyway. Kayla Harrison is going to be in high demand as a free agent, but nobody values her more than the Professional Fighters League does. No one's going to pay her more than the Professional Fighters League is willing to pay her. And ultimately, this is a business. And now that she's the mom of 2 children, I know that financial security and making sure their future is set is more important to her than anything else. So I think that this is such a mutually beneficial relationship. It would be very unwise for the PFL to let her go anywhere else. And I think it'd be very unwise for her to push the envelope to go somewhere else. I just think that it's a marriage, right? In a marriage, it's hard to tell who's more important, mom or dad, for the health of the family, right? You don't put one over the other. Kayla Harrison helped the PFL to arrive on the major mixed martial arts scene. And the PFL obviously was the most integral piece in Kayla Harrison becoming what she is in the sport of mixed martial arts. For them to split up now, for me, would be bad for both parties.
You know, we talked about Schulte and Palmer, and all due credit to them, going back to back was amazing. But you know who quietly can maybe surpass them? I don't know. It might be close. Maybe you can weigh in. But how about Ray Cooper now? 3rd final, if I'm not mistaken. So if he wins here, he'd go back to back. He would have one finals loss to the opponent he faces here. So that makes it even more interesting. But this guy literally is one of the best athletes produced by PFL, along with Kayla Harrison.
Yeah, look, if Ray Cooper wins this final, then he is the best fighter that the PFL has ever had in its short history, right? Because he's been in 3 finals, as you just mentioned, and if he wins 2 out of those 3, that puts him on unique ground. Nobody else has done that. Very few people have gotten back-to-back championships. Kayla obviously has an opportunity to do that, but Kayla hasn't been in the sport or fought the same caliber of fighters to get to this spot that Ray Cooper III has. So Ray's on a different level right now, man. And you know, I hope that he gets the respect that he deserves. I hope Maga gets the respect he deserves too, because that Maga versus Ray Cooper III at 170 pounds in one of the deepest weight classes in the sport is as compelling or more compelling than any fight that the UFC can put on. I like both Ray Cooper's chances and Maga's chances against any top 10 fighter in the world right now. Anybody on the UFC roster, anybody on the Bellator roster, these dudes are at the top level of the sport, and they're squaring off again for a championship. That's the people's main event, so to speak. That's the fight of the night.
I'm with you. Lots to watch, man. I co-sign on that. Lots to watch. Julia Budd just got signed. She's going to be fighting on that card. Clarissa Shields is back for her sophomore appearance. And then we got 6 title fights on October 27th. It's a Wednesday night, folks. 6 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Plus, and then they will move to the main card on ESPN2. And this is Sean O'Connell, their play-by-play announcer, along with Randy Couture, Kenny Florian. They'll be calling the action. He's also a former champion in the light heavyweight division. Thank you, Sean, for your time as always. It's always a great chat with you.
Thanks for having me, fellas. I'll see you soon. Thanks.